Now, whether you're working in technology services or product, it's an old but true adage that our people are our greatest assets. Many of us are engaged in hiring practices to increase diversity amongst our teams, but this really is just the start. In our closing keynote, Foster a Culture of Progression and Retain Your Talent, Sam Phillips, co-founder and CTO at Resently, discusses strategies for creating an environment where people can get the progression they need without feeling the need to leave.
Good evening, folks. I'm Sam, and I'm co-founder and CTO at Resently, the startup that's fixing renting for renters. In tonight's session, I wanted to talk a little bit about enabling progression and growth for your team members. Not so much about the development plans and progression frameworks, although these are really important, but more about creating a culture where, in addition to being progression is actually not only it's the default organization is operating. My agenda today is really, really simple. We'll chat a little bit about what motivates me to create a culture of progression and growth and share some research. I'll then go through a few ways in which you can get started. I tend to work in startups, so I'm almost always getting started, but plenty of this applies to us, those of us working in larger organizations too. So, what are my motivations? Well, as a leader, I see my job as making the machine that makes the machine. My product is the team. When it comes to progression, my first motivation is just the feeling and the logic of it. One of my key inputs to creating a product, my team, is hiring. It's critical and worth doing well. But if you have high turnover of team members, it's logical that you'll end up having to do way more hiring, taking time away from other things. More profoundly, though, if your teams are unstable, they will struggle to reach a point of high performance. As team members change, dynamics change too, and psychological safety can suffer. Forming the relationships within the new team takes time. The people you retain also get better at working in your organization over time as they develop their skills, domain knowledge, and internal context. And the last thing that's obvious to me is myself. I'm a learner and I want to get better. I've left really good jobs because I wasn't learning anything anymore. And I'm not alone. Learning and getting better is a natural human instinct. Progression is not about changing people. The desire to learn and improve is who we are, and it's how your team members already want to be treated. They're more versatile than we sometimes think. At home, they're the IT support person. They fix things, they raise children, they drive cars, they do loads and loads of things. Your team members are extremely competent and varied in their skill set, and they want to do more. I also believe that I have two more general responsibilities. Firstly, like many people, I believe that an inclusive workplace with a diverse workforce brings business upside. But in a way, I don't care. I strive for a diverse workplace for itself alone, not for the business results. But because we have a business responsibility to create it, a moral responsibility to create it. If we have the opportunity to make the world better, how could we not take that opportunity? A culture of progression enables the diverse workplace. I'm going to take a sip of this water. A culture of progression enables the diverse workplace because it increases retention, meaning that when you make efforts to recruit more diversely, those efforts aren't wasted when people leave in a year or two because they have no opportunities. It's easier to hit diversity targets when recruiting for less experienced people. Retaining those folks is the key to having diversity throughout your team. My other general responsibility is that of a leader in a startup. People have this idea that startups are risky places to work, somehow riskier than other small businesses or large businesses. It's not true. All of these organizations have to make difficult choices and sometimes cuts. But still, if I want to sleep at night, and my way of ensuring this is that if something goes wrong, the folks in my team will be able to find a new role. If I've invested in growth and I can say with a straight face and a clear conscience that everybody who joins my team leaves more qualified and more employable than when they started, then I've met that responsibility. And of course, there is data backing this up. We often talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sure almost all of you have seen it before, where basic needs like shelter and belonging are met, along with self-actualization, becoming the best you can be, also known as progression. Richer, more vigorous sources of data exist, though, which I thought I would share. Gallup, based upon surveys they've been doing since the 1990s on what attracts people to roles and what causes them to leave. When ranking what's important to folks when choosing a new role, self-actualization, the ability to do what they do best, is at the top. This correlates with why people leave. The top reason is a lack of growth. Money is fourth. I like the old saying, and I think it's true, that people join companies and they leave managers, but I think when they stay for themselves. Gallup's data is based on their Q12 model. This is 12 questions to evaluate your met, basic needs, individual needs, teamwork needs, and growth needs. These aren't linear, they overlap and growth and not just questions out. This is being miles away from theory tell us, but their data back it up. Staff turnover goes down by 59%. Growth needs are met. The question I ask myself is creating environment learning.
It's always slightly embarrassing to say that a conference that is involving lots of technologists is having slight technical issues. Sam's just having some troubles with his internet connection. We're doing a few things to see what we can do to address those. We should be back fairly shortly. I'm pleased to find out that Sam's internet connection seemed to be resolved, and so we'll continue with Sam and our closing keynote.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. My next door neighbors were drilling earlier. They might have got through my internet connection. So, as I was saying, the question I ask myself as a leader is, am I creating an environment in which learning can actually happen, not the expectation that it will happen? So this is my list as an engineering leader. I'm sure you'll have your own. Remove obstacles, teamwork, work transparently, delegate autonomy, and support intentionally. And one thing I see often is places going quite formal, quite early. And I don't think this is necessary. I don't think it's always necessary to start with a formal development plan. In fact, whilst these are useful, a document for a manager and a team member to fill in, and for ambitious teammates, a good early way to focus conversations, it can lack structure when the expectations of formal progression aren't in place and jar against a culture where progression isn't truly supported. That's why I talk about a culture of progression, the opportunities to learn, as a precursor for the learning process. Again, my question is, am I, as a leader, creating an environment in which learning can actually happen, not just the expectation that it will happen. So for me, a leader's first task is to remove obstacles. This basically covers the first 3/4 of Gallup's survey. First, hire great people. And second, to a degree, get out of their way. And we'll talk about delegation in a moment. But definitely try and let the organization get out of their way. How can you have an authentic conversation about growth when even getting the day-to-day stuff done is hard? We've all worked with big company nonsense, and a lot of it is unavoidable and unassailable. I worked at a company where emails took an hour to be delivered if they had too many recipients. I worked at another where my laptop crashed every 30 minutes. I can't get better at my job if I can't do my job. As leaders in different organizations, we'll have different amounts of influence, but use what you can to make the environment where growth conversations don't seem ridiculous. My second fundamental thing, along with removing obstacles, is requiring teamwork. Require, I guess, might seem quite forceful, but I believe that this is one of the most effective things that you can do. Whenever I've been brought into a team to teach them agile or to improve productivity, what I invariably find isn't waterfall, it's chaos and no teamwork. There are often people working in proximity, maybe physically, maybe in similar code or business areas, but their work is not shared. My definition of a team, if you are sick, I can continue your work because the work is shared and we've been regularly communicating about progress. Teams are incredibly powerful and can become the primary locus of learning. It's literal in a way. There are literally people there to help you and to teach you, and you have the opportunities to teach as well and to learn to teach. What's more, with the psychological safety of your team around you, you can learn things, try things, and you can fail. The team is not in competition with each other, and we only succeed together. One thing I love about the technology industry and the practices of teamwork and agile is that there's no sleight of hand to it. We show clearly how we're doing things, and by teaching through our daily actions, we make knowledge accessible. It's much more possible to work with a stakeholder, to run a retrospective, to do a story kickoff when you've been part of these processes many times before. So I like to teach through my daily actions and the daily actions of the team by mapping in the open and providing growth as the default. As a leader, you should make sure that you're letting people stretch themselves, but providing a safety net. Let them try roles and tasks out, see if they like them, see what they need to do to become good at them. Actually, this is, I'll confess, the hardest one for me. Situational leadership tells us about how much we can delegate, but it's always my urge to push and see how to thrive. It's easy to delegate when you're sure, and then feel very pleased with yourself about how it went. If things went perfectly, though, maybe you delegated too late, and that person or team was capable a while ago. A growth area for me is when things don't go perfectly or don't go well at all. And it's important to remember that people are enough, but they can grow, they want to grow, but they need feedback. And the simply is no substitute for good work, people and coaching. It's your job to let them know how they're getting on and also to encourage coaching conversations where they evaluate themselves. Feedback is part of their compensation. You've got to help them close that loop. You've got to help them find opportunities to do more. If your team member has an ambition or a development plan, show up for it. Remember to ask about it in one-on-ones, listen actively, and be consistent. Before you get into formal progression planning, you can do informal development plans with your most capable and ambitious teammates before you roll out a bigger process. Thank you. Wow, this slide went really broken. Thank you. My message today has been that you might not need a formal framework as early as you think. And timing is important because it's a significant investment of time to make a framework. But when you do need a framework, I of course recommend going all in. It's a great way of giving clarity over where people are and what's expected now, and in the future. It puts a structure around your growth conversations and can be used for the ambitious, the underperformers, and the ones who need to be shown the path just a little bit more. There are loads of great resources in this conference and around the internet on Progression Framework. I'm going to tweet a bunch of these straight after. So if you follow me on Twitter, @SamsAllofKnow, I'll tweet a bunch of links right now. And that's it for now. Thank you so much for bearing with me during internet problems. And thank you so much for listening, and for CTO Craft for having me. If you'd like to talk some more, give me some feedback or ask a question, that'd be great. Follow me on Twitter @SamsAllofKnow. Enjoy the rest of the conference.